Hi, I'm Georgia.
And I'm Rene, and welcome to Zen and Tech. We have a new sponsor tonight, Georgia.
Tell me, who is it?
Zen and Tech is brought to you tonight by NatureBox. Now, NatureBox, I don't know if I shared, they sent me a box. Actually, when they were sponsoring MacBreak, I got a box of goodies. I don't know if I gave you any or not.
You gave me, you ate them all. You gave me any of the goodies, Rene.
That sounds about right. So what NatureBox is, I'll give you I'll give you the quick version first. NatureBox are smarter snacks. So, I mean, like we always tell everyone to eat really good quality food, but people like to snack. Snacking is what we do. And they try to give you the best snacking choices possible. So if you're going to snack well, I guess is the motto here. And I tried stuff like there was spicy pistachio nuts. There were these great little, what do you call it? In French, it's mili-melo, those little, you know what I'm talking about? Those snack things where you mix everything together. Anyways,
yeah,
you know
like trail mix.
Trail mix sort of stuff. Yeah, it's all that kind of stuff. It's all your favorite snacks. It's chips. It's pretzel sticks. It's anything you can imagine. But they're a smarter way to do it. I'm just looking at some of the stuff they have up here. They have French toast granola, sourdough cheddar pretzels, flax crostini bites, honeycomb sunflower kernels, pear praline crunch. God, I'm getting hungry.
Those sound
Cranberry
great.
macaroon granola, smoky barbecue peas, chia seed crackers, sea salt and cracked pepper pumpkin seeds, salted caramel pretzel. This stuff should be illegal.
Why? Now I know why you didn't share.
Well, in my defense, it was for MacBreak at the time, not for this show, or I might have maybe possibly shared.
Fair enough.
So
Did Leo get any?
Yes, actually he did. He had an even bigger box than I did.
There we go.
But anyways, I want you to check it out for yourself because me talking about food can only make you hungry. You actually getting food can make you happy. So if you go to naturebox.com/Zen, it's a subscription service. So basically you sign up and they send you tasty treats each and every month. You get 50% off your first month. It is NatureBox, NatureBox.com/Zen, Z-E-N, or Z-E-N if you're in America. But I want you to try it, and next time you can actually snack on it while you're watching this show. Sound good?
It sounds like a deal.
All right, you look like you were actually reaching for food instead of answering me there.
I'm hungry, so that's probably not the first thing that you should be, because I'm going to be surfing the web to try to get some instead of being on the show.
All right, so I did something horrible to you. I changed the topic for this show literally 2 minutes before we started recording.
You really did. You really did. I'm like, let's do burnout because so many people suffer from burnout, and you're like, no, let's do inclusivity. And I like the idea of inclusivity, so we're going with it.
We recently had Natalia Berdis on the Debug podcast, and she gave a great talk at WWDC about inclusivity and about reaching out to people with autism. And she made a point, like, because often this is called accessibility, but she said that it's more than accessibility. Accessibility is usually, people with visual impairments or auditory impairments or motor skill impairments or focus impairments, something like that. And yes, a lot of companies are doing great things. They're making it easier for people with autism, people with dyslexia, people who are hard of sight, hard of hearing, all these things. But if you go beyond that, sort of the point is that inclusivity is for everybody. For example, young kids, how do we help young kids get better at using technology sooner? Or people who are elderly and have never used computers before because they've always been intimidating and inaccessible to them. Inclusivity is about designing hardware and software. Stephen Aquino taught me that. Hardware and software that lets everyone, everyone gets a turn at the table.
Right, which means that you have to open up the dialogue, though, and allow people to use the technology and let them discuss what makes things easier or not. And I think that often, people that are not in the in-group are avoided from these discussions, and so you don't really know unless you've lived a little bit in their shoes or have spoken to people that are experts in those fields of how does tech best interact with different groups of people.
Yeah, I think sometimes we forget, like we do a lot of help and how-to content on Mobile Nations, on iMore,
Hmm.
Android Central, Windows Phone Central, Crackberry, Connectedly. And a lot of times, like we'll do simple stuff and there'll be a backlash to it, like people, oh, everybody knows this. But we have found that that is absolutely not true. I
No.
remember, and everyone wants to laugh when I say this, but we got an email from somebody who said, why doesn't Apple make a way for us to turn off the iPhone screen? Why do I have to wait for the screen to turn off? And
Hmm.
there's a button right there, but that person just never thought of it, never saw it, never put it in that context. And I think for all of us, there are those moments, like when Allie and I write this stuff, she'll say something that I never knew. I've been using this 6 years, I never knew that. Or I'll say something and she'll say, wow, like the other day we were doing contacts, like you could add them like this too. Really? Yeah, I didn't know that. All of it is new to us at some point.
It's kind of funny that, you get the backlash about like doing a how-to on how to turn off your iPhone, which is slightly, and I completely understand that. I can understand how people go like, really, come on, like it's like having the instructions on the coffee saying, caution, the coffee is hot. But the thing is that you're taking everything from the perspective of who you are at your intelligence level with the things that you are doing, and you're not thinking about other people. So there's some people that might be slower than you and they still need to use the technology, and it would be nice if they have steps and how-tos that help them. If, what is the best technology to help your child that might be dealing with autism, or what are the applications that if you're blind and you want to listen to, say, audiobooks, or you want to interact with what can you do in order to help that? And I think that that's really, it closes up the technological divide.
Mhm.
One is for just price, but it's also about usability. How do people use it? How do they interact with different things? Right now, I'm using the float to hold my iPad, and I got something similar for my aunt who has Parkinson's, because it is hard for her to tap the different parts of the screen if she's going through some tremors, and she also doesn't have the same strength or stamina. If not, but she still wants to be able to Skype with her family members and to be able to write back to emails. And so how-tos that might seem simple for you might not be simple for someone else, and there's so many people that are dealing with different types of difficulties that you may never have thought of or known of. So, try to make sure that it might not be for you, but it doesn't mean that it's not for everyone. And there's a niche that it might fill, and they might really need it.
See, I would argue it doesn't even have to be someone slower than you. There are people with wide ranges of life experience. Like there are people who could go out, hunt, kill, clean, and serve up their own food. I have to buy food in little plastic wrappers.
Hmm.
There are people who
Yeah,
can
you're
make
right.
their own clothing. I have to buy my clothing in a store. These people may never have touched a computer before, never,
Hmm.
and a
Yeah.
tablet or a phone could be their first computer, and they have no idea how any of this stuff works. And if we can help them, I mean, yes, there are absolutely people who are hard of seeing, hard of hearing, and stuff like that. But there are also people who just their learned experience has never included computing devices.
Right, and everyone deserves to be able to, you know, do what everyone else can do, and they need to figure out everything can be done if you're taught, if we change, if we decide to interact with how it is, so that everyone can be able to, Skype, talk to their friends, answer emails, apply to job interviews. And so I think that we often only see the world from our own facet of where we're coming from, and we need to look a little bit beyond ourselves. If you've never seen a computer before, an iPad is something, oh, I was going to do it, magical. Um,
You did it too late.
technology, I did it. But it's just something that's completely foreign to that. And so just like for like my mom, I told her, I wrote out for her iPad, she loves her iPad, I wrote out for her the steps in how to turn on and off, stop. I think it was like, because it keeps on asking her for Wi-Fi, and I said, so I said hit the X button. And so she's like, yes, Georgia, don't worry, I turned it off, I smacked my iPad, I hit it. And I'm like, no, 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 it's glass, don't do that. But I had to think that I wrote down hit. I did say hit. And then I'm like, it's glass, I meant, press gently. And she's not used to the fact that it's touch sensitive. She's used to buttons.
Yeah.
So she presses excessively hard on her iPad. I'm always a little bit worried. And that's just because she has not interacted with this as often as we have. And so to her, buttons had to be pressed. There was no touch sensitivity with things, and that's new to her, and she has to learn to that, and that's okay as well.
And I think there's other aspects of this too. Like for example, BlackBerry with I think it's the Q5 and Windows Phone, I think it's the 520, and Android with a variety of devices, including Google's new Android One program, are making things accessible and inclusive by virtue of their incredibly low price. If a phone is $600, that can only appeal to somebody who can spend $600.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, in North America we have contracts, so you can get almost any phone for, you know, a couple of years old maybe, but you can get almost any phone for $0 down, and that's really important to people who are struggling to pay for food and shelter and stuff like that. But in other countries, there is only upfront price. There is no contracts, and for them, a phone that is $100, while we might think, oh, you know, it's not the greatest build quality, doesn't have the latest processors in it, it's not the biggest screen, for them, just being able to buy that, that is now their primary computing device. That is, as you said, how they're going to stay in touch with people, communicate with people, do their jobs, and to have accessibility of price point and inclusivity of earnings levels. I think that is hugely important as well.
Yeah, and often you always have like one of every single tech that you keep one of them. You have like more tech than I can see it all behind you. And when you do a how-to or you talk about like the old tech, often people will write in saying, oh, please, like who uses like the iPad, like the first iPad, no one uses that, or who uses that old phone that looks like, you know, a rotary dial, like cell phone,
Phil
or something else.
He's still using his Nexus 1, proudly.
There are some people that can't afford to, aren't in the position or choose not to constantly upgrade their technology, and they also deserve to be able to use it, to learn how to use it, and to find workarounds so that they can be connected to whatever is the newest tech that is there. And I think that less and less, as our society becomes less of a disposable society, because that's what, you know, in most of the developed world we have been, and we're starting to realize that that's probably not the best way to live. People are going to keep a tech, and they're probably going to update all of the software, but at some point we are not going to be buying as maybe probably not actually, but hopefully we will not be as disposable as quickly with every single treat and trinket that we have with us. I'm going to get a whole bunch of no, Georgia. No.
I think that that's a good point that you raised, because another thing is, for example, you and I have given away previous generation devices to family members, and they were sometimes young people, or they were sometimes, you know, parents or uncles or grandparents even, who either couldn't afford it or just would never think of getting it, and they are using devices that are a couple of years old. Maybe they're using an iPad 1, maybe they're using an iPhone 3GS or an iPhone 4, maybe they're using a Nexus 1, you know, maybe they're using, I gave my first generation Nexus 7 away to a relative. And for them, I mean, it is a window into the internet and an access to apps. And for them, it's fantastic. We might go, oh, it's not the latest and greatest. And I think we do have in tech a little bit of a snob complex when it comes to using the latest, greatest devices. And I think that another part of being inclusive is democratizing technology, giving more people access to it.
I think that's a huge issue. I think that there's a lot of snobbery in tech. I think that if you you know, are using a really old program, or if you send someone by email something in Word, you might get trashed on Twitter. Just saying, pointing no fingers at anywhere, but it might be where your comfort level is. It might have been the program that you learned as a child. It might be the only program that you know, and I think that we should. You can still trash me. It's okay. It's hilarious, but. It's something that might be where they're comfortable, and we want to have more people in the field and feel comfortable with that, not be as harshly judgmental and snicker and send pictures of people when they're using, like, you know, the huge brick phones with a suitcase in order to send their phones, which is actually probably very retro cool now. But we want to have more people that are going to be, it's kind of hipster now, but you want to have more people that are inclusive and feel that they can become part of it, not that we end up this little tiny elitist society, because difference helps make us strong.
Yeah, and there are, going back to the classic examples of inclusivity and accessibility, the vendors are doing a much better job of doing things like speak selection or voiceover, so that if you can't read, well, there's several things. Like if you have trouble reading, you should be able to make the typography bigger. And big screens are part of the things that help with that. Some big screens, they're not big because they have more pixels, they're big because the pixels are bigger. And that means it's easier for you to read. And being able to scale the font size is better for you. But also, if you really can't read, having it read out to you, having it dictated to you is phenomenally accessible. There are interfaces with hearing aids now. You can set different vibration patterns. So let's say you can't hear, but there's a vibration, but vibration's not the same as ringtone, so you can make your own vibration tone. So maybe it's buzz buzz buzz, or maybe it's buzz 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 buzz, or buzz buzz
Mm-hmm.
buzz buzz. But you have all that kind of customizability, or maybe you have a notification light or a flash that can blink, and even though you can't hear the phone, you can see it visually blinking at you. And there's all these things that the vendor can do, but also that the people who write the apps. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit extra work. Sometimes it means you can't do as much custom stuff because if you're redoing the entire interface, you don't get all that free accessibility stuff. You have to implement it yourself, and then you don't have time, so you don't do it. But I think the more you can do that, the more that you can give people access to your software. And again, maybe it's motor skills. Maybe you've got to have bigger buttons, easier to hit targets. Any of those things, I think it's not only good karma, but it makes such a difference to those people's lives. It's essentially giving them the ability to function as opposed to not.
I think that on the developer side, it's also though cost versus benefit of what you're going to be able to deal with it with profit. And so I think that we need to try to support apps that are more inclusive than not, for those that can't, just to let them know that it makes a difference and that it matters to us, because it is really difficult and really costly, and there's many different, it's also going to take longer to bring something out to market. But I think that, and I think that more and more we are, showing off, different applications and the way that they can be used to make other people's lives better, because most of us are very, very fortunate that if you're probably watching this podcast, you are living a relatively good life, and not everyone is having that much of a difficulty. If you're in a hospital bedroom, or if you have some paralysis in your arms, or whatever it might be, life becomes a little bit more difficult, and technology might be your way to reach out and to feel a part of the world. So it means a lot to you.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things there, though. Like, I think it's interesting because a lot of the operating systems now give you accessibility, or at least some level, depending on the vendor, for free. Like, if you use the standard components, like for example in iOS, if you use UIKit, you get a tremendous amount of accessibility for free.
Mm-hmm.
Mostly the hearing and the motor skills and a lot of that is just almost completely handled by the operating system. It's really the speak selection and voiceover. And if you use the UIKit stuff, that's all free too. But if you want to redo everything, if you want to make it custom, if you want to make it unique, and this mostly applies to games because games have to paint the screen almost completely uniquely. But some developers also they don't want to look like a standard app, so they spend a lot of time making it look like a custom app. But then you've got to, again, redo that accessibility stuff, and it's harder to fit in. So you've made your app look different, but the expense of people using it, where maybe if your app looks similar and differentiated differently, and it's easy for me to say, I'm not a developer, you'd still get that incredible benefit. So I understand it's a juggling act, but I think there is sort of value in making a really informed opinion about what's important to you and what's important to your app.
And I think that if you have a certain difficulty with certain things, that you need to make your voice heard, because if they don't know about that, they can't make the changes to deal with it. I remember, I do not know if it was Bejeweled or another game, but they ended up having a version for those that are colorblind. Mm-hmm. So it had little dots and checks instead of the different colors, so that you could still play the game and enjoy it. And I thought that was really wonderful and really helpful for people. And it would also be helpful for people that had difficulty seeing, or perhaps a lot of glaucoma or cataracts, and it was just your vision was not as good, and so I think that was helpful as well. And if you speak up and talk about it and help out people and say, this is what I need, this is what we can deal with it, and reach out to each other, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and that actually reminded me of something, because there was this debate going on about what the responsibility is of the platform owner. So, for example, should Microsoft, should Google, should Apple, should BlackBerry refuse to put apps in the store that aren't accessible? And that's one far extreme of it. And the other extreme is they shouldn't care at all about these things. Now, I think it would be hard to say that they shouldn't put apps in that aren't accessible, because some apps, by design, there's different levels of accessibility that you need for certain apps. To make a stupid example, like an app that is a mirror, that all it does is show you your own picture, probably doesn't need visual accessibility, because all it is designed to be visual. So a blanket rule, I think, is not helpful. But there are things. That
mirror app, like, actually visually describe me, but that would be really scary.
You look good today. You look bad.
You're looking really tired. Underneath your eyes, there are dark rings.
But I think there is some value in, for example, Some people said, right now there's editor's choice badges that are going to
Hmm.
be on the App Store. Maybe there should be accessibility badges. It says
I
whether an
love
app,
that.
yeah, it says whether an app, it says the age category, it says whether it's universal or not. It says whether it has in-app purchase or not. Maybe it should say whether it's accessible or not. Or
I love that,
maybe
and it can, yeah, give the different levels of accessibility to what? Accessible for people with a hearing impairment or those that are for the elderly, larger screen. Like you could go through it and you could get like, it could get a rank depending on that, like a bronze badge or a silver badge or a gold badge, meaning it's accessible to a lot of people, and you could click on and see because it's really helpful for me. I would love that.
yeah, I think that's, and I don't know whether they should actually enumerate it the way they do, for example, privacy policies on the Google Play Store, where it says it wants camera for this and it wants network access for this. It could say supports, voiceover or supports speak selection, and that might be good. I don't know if maybe you encourage them by saying, we're not going to feature you unless you're accessible, or maybe that's, like how do you
That might
balance
be.
that?
I think that just having like a badge and showcasing, like if they had a feature of showcasing, certain accessibilities as one of the other, like in the App Store, and for Google, they just had a set for those that are, fully integrated, and then you could look to see, and you would look in those applications if you're getting something that might be for an elderly parent or someone that is sick or someone that has, mobility difficulties. You could then look in that section specifically. And then for those that are developing applications, they would have one other area that they may be featured. And I think that that would be a benefit to them, and they may just choose to do that. I hate the thought of severely punishing people for not being able to maybe afford or have the know-how or have the knowledge to be able to do it. I would love more just that positive reinforcement of we will
Incentives.
encourage it and we will show it, and yeah, you'll be featured to that.
Yeah, the carrot versus the stick, right?
Yeah. And some people would say you should do both, but it's not necessary.
But I do, like, again, I'm depressed that we have to have the debate, but I'm super happy that we're actually having the debate.
I don't know if I'm depressed that we have to have the debate, in that at least we know that we are progressing, that the debate matters now. It would be wonderful, yes, if this had happened 20 years ago, for sure, for all types of integration, but it's nice that at least this is a conversation that is happening now.
So, Georgia, we are going to talk a little bit about Harry's. Now, I know I've been telling you about this, and we talked about them previously on the TV show with Dave Wiskus. But, you go to the pharmacy or the supermarket, and you see those razors hanging there.
Yeah, I do.
Now, we're lucky in Canada because I went to San Francisco to try to buy one, and they were under lock and key, and I had to wait 10 minutes for someone to come and unlock it just for me to get my hands on razor packets that I ended up paying way too much money for. Here, they're sort of dangling at the end of the cashier's line or in the toiletries section. But you go there, you buy them, they're flimsy, they're plastic, they have a lot of blades in them, they're disposable, they don't work right, you cut yourself. It is not an enjoyable experience. Am I wrong about any of that?
No, it's absolutely right. It's absolutely right.
And it really is, like, they have a whole term of business, razor blades. Like, like you sell the blades, not the razors. So there's this company called Harry's, and they would no longer let this stand. This was untenable, intolerable to them. They demanded something better, and they were lucky, and we're all lucky that they were smart enough to go and do it. So I got my Harry's kit, and I tried it out. And what it is, it comes in this beautiful box. I'm going to call it Apple-esque unboxing experience. And you open it up.
Beautiful box.
It really is, and it's like, whoa.
It's nice.
And you take out the razor, and I said this before, when you pick up this razor, it's like going from a creaky plastic phone to a beautiful aluminum phone, because it's all metal, it's beautifully weighted, it's gorgeously designed, and you feel like you're holding something of value. But that is the interesting thing, because it is not expensive. It is, in fact, way less expensive than the printer ink style scheme that a lot of these razor companies have going for them.
And it makes a beautiful gift, because it comes in,
It
it's
does.
a beautiful set. Like, it makes a beautiful gift, and it's not like a hugely expensive gift either, but it looks like it and it feels like it, which is very cool.
And it comes with the razor, it comes with the blades, it comes with the shaving cream, which is very nice shaving cream, and it's very, I forget the right word for it, but it doesn't contain bad things that make the earth and universe go, ah! It does not contain those things.
It's good. It's good that it doesn't contain the
It
things that
contains
make
no earth screamables. And I tested it out because, I do have facial hair, and I sacrificed it a couple days ago to shave and test it out, and it was really, really good. It's not hard. Like sometimes it feels like you're shaving with a stick with some of those disposable razors. This glides, this moves. It was like skates or something. It was an elegant experience. I felt like a human being for the first time in a long time.
It was a nice way to shave. I tried it out as well, and it did feel really nice. I enjoyed using it. So it's a beautiful gift again.
I agree with that completely. So here is what you can do. I just got to make sure I have the right things here. If you go to harrys.com and you use promo code ZEN, Z-E-N, Z-E-N for Americans, you can save $5 off your first purchase. Now, again, this is, like George said, this makes a personal gift. I would argue it makes a fantastic gift for yourself, too. Giving starts at home.
Yeah, and you deserve to.
Yes. So once again, you go to Harry's, you enter offer code ZEN. You will save $5 off your purchase. If you are a man, your face will thank you. If you are Dave Wiskus, your back will thank you. If you are a woman, your legs will thank you. Well, in short, whatever you use this on, it will thank you. And I want to thank Harry's for sponsoring the show, because I want more. See, the only thing about this is when I use products that aren't designed like Harry's, I get angry now. I'm like, why don't you do this for toothbrushes? Why aren't you doing this for doorknobs? I just want everything done with this sort of care and attention to detail.
But yeah, that's the problem, is that once you have something that's a really good quality, you can't really go back to something that's lower quality, because it makes shaving a much more effortless experience, and you're not going to nick yourself or cut yourself as often. It's just nice.
Yes, so check them out. We're at the end of the San Diego Comic Convention, and some of the news that presaged it, that came out right before it, was about comic books, something that you and I and our friends, Dave Wiskus and Guy English, talk about quite a bit on the Review podcast. But this was interesting to me. They're taking Thor and they're making Thor female. They're not making Lady Thor. They're not making Thor's daughter. They're not making Thor girl or whatever. They're not putting Sif in Thor armor. They are actually taking Thor, whomsoever holds this hammer, if she be worthy, shall possess the power of Thor, and they're making Thor a woman. What do you think of this?
Ooh, it is a huge subject to me. I am of two minds of it. Part of me, I'm a purist. I like the idea that Thor is a man. In the movies, he's a pretty fine-looking man, and I like that. I like the way that it used to be. So that's part of me that's like, you know what? Why change the mythos so much so that you're changing the sex? That's kind of what I'm thinking to it.
And the other mind?
And then the other side of me, it says, like, it really does mean a lot. There are not very many female superheroes that stand on their own. So they're not part of a team. They're not the one token female. They have their own set. And so it would be really cool, and I think really important for women growing up, to have a hero that is theirs, that has a strong character and fan base and a strong storyline. But then I think to myself, no, sorry, I had to do that. After that, I think, why couldn't they just make a different female character instead of using Thor? And I can even answer that, because how are they going to get a fan base to that character?
Yeah, so I'm like you. I'm of two minds on this. Like, on one hand, I think it's sad to say that it's great. I mean, it's well past due that they have major female characters, major characters who aren't white men, quite frankly. But like you, I mean, they're taking Thor and they're changing him. And there's a couple of things, like there's some interesting female characters already. For example, Storm. Storm was even given an Uru hammer by Loki in an in an X-Men annual by Chris Claremont and Arthur Adams. She was turned into a thunder goddess. Could they elevate Thor? Could they take an existing female character and elevate them? And it's not unprecedented. I mean, Iron Man was always a staple of the Avengers, but he wasn't part of popular culture until Robert Downey Jr. played him in the Iron Man movies. So Marvel is capable of elevating characters. Creating new characters, though, is really, really hard. You could count on your hands new characters that have become hugely successful since like the Jack Kirby, basically outside Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, the Justice League, and Spider-Man, and maybe Fantastic Four, Avengers, X-Men. Like Wolverine comes to mind. For women, maybe Elektra. I mean,
there's a whole bunch of characters that you could already use that have their own mythos. So there's Wonder Woman, there's Elektra, there's Rogue, there's Storm. Unfortunately, Halle Berry destroyed Catwoman. That's not happening anymore.
Well, that's right, but in DC side there is Catwoman, there's Wonder Woman.
There's just a whole bunch of different female
Supergirl.
Characters that you could, buy. I don't know, again, like all of the different things of like, who do you own, who do you have the rights to? It becomes kind of a sticky little bit of a mess. You could also just make your own female pro characters. I think that the movie Frozen did make a huge difference because it was such a mammoth success. People are thinking, oh my goodness, women will actually, and girls will actually go to movies and want to see female-driven storylines that, pass the Bechdel test and other things like that. So I think that that's it, but I don't know, it bothers me a little bit because it seems pushed. And I don't think that it is necessary because there are a lot of strong female characters that they could make a movie to. I've been waiting for, Wonder Woman to have her own movie all on her own.
They didn't make the Joss Whedon movie. It didn't get greenlit.
And he writes amazingly strong, fabulous characters. He took Buffy the Vampire Slayer and just ran with it, and men love the show.
Although maybe arguably it shouldn't be Joss Whedon, it should be a female director. I mean, I don't know how many layers we can go into this. But the other thing that interests me...
Shouldn't it be just the best, shouldn't it be the best writer, not just a female writer?
But then if you don't have more female writers, more women won't get into it and more women won't rise to the top of the profession. I mean, we were looking at how many female directors and female writers are out there, and it's still... it makes a lot of other industries look positively progressive, the amount of women screenwriters.
Okay, I'll argue the point on the opposite side, which is kind of funny. But I think that it is really important, first off, it would be great to have female writers, but if you want to have female writers, again, similar to what Brianna Wu says, is that, she was like, what, there's no female developer companies that are all female, so I'm just going to make my own. And so I think that there is a certain case that it is difficult to break into any field, but to take something away from Joss Whedon writes women in a way that is very strong, very equal, very interesting, it breaks all of the different stereotypes. I think that you shouldn't take away from other writers that already do an amazing job, because unfortunately, as with the YouTube video that you sent out, which is act like a girl or do you throw like a girl, women also fall into the same cultural stereotypes. Run like a girl. That men fall into. So you should just, I think that that's also an important standpoint. I don't think that you should take away from writers or say that, well, no, now it has to be, a female writer to write the female character. I think that that's taking something away from men that are able to write really strong female characters.
Sure, but he can't write everything. You got to give the man some break.
He was already going to write it. It's not like he can't write anything. He was there. He wrote a script. He had a script. He was,
but part of it depresses me, Georgia. It depresses me that you have to go to Joss Whedon to get a strong woman's character written.
You don't have to. He just happened to be there. He happened to be given it. Just give him the green light. Give him my money already, and let's make a movie that was already going to be made. Which is, for character development and young girls growing up, that's a big deal.
So one of the other things is, could you, for example, instead of making Thor female, create a new female character, put your absolute best top draw talent on it, the most popular writer, the most popular artist, and announce that you're making it into a movie and get A-list characters, put the muscle of that production company behind it. Could you manufacture this rather than having to take an existing property and alter it?
Well, I think that you definitely could. Yeah, why not? Why couldn't you?
Instead of Scarlett Johansson making the Lucy movie, why wasn't that a Black Widow movie? Instead of instead of Halle Berry doing that extant TV show, why isn't she doing a Storm show? I mean, there seems like there's all these opportunities that aren't being taken where they could have strong female characters in movies.
I think that they're not sure that women. Okay, so they're not sure. So women, they made the Frozen movie, which is I just used because it's one of the more recent movies, and it was a huge hit. So they have Frozen. It was a Disney production, which already goes to little girls. I think that they're worried that women, do not watch superhero movies, and hence will not bring in enough to support a superhero movie that is one single female cast member driven.
Well, arguably, they made Catwoman and they made Elektra, and both of those were not very good movies. Fortunately,
Elektra wasn't too bad. It wasn't a horrible movie.
I liked Daredevil, even I didn't like Elektra.
It wasn't like Catwoman. Catwoman, it's true, it destroyed. They're both. you can't really you can't put them up. They were just so poorly done. I don't know why, for whatever reasons. They both had fabulous female actresses. They were really they were just really bad movies. So it doesn't stand much for us, but I just don't know how many levels that they went wrong on those movies. So perhaps that makes them a little bit gun shy, but I think that there's a lot of women that love superhero movies.
So the other announcement was that Captain America was going to be black. Now that's not exactly what it sounds. They're not taking Steve Rogers, Captain America, and making him black. They're taking Sam Wilson, who was the Falcon, and people might remember him from the Winter Soldier movie if you don't know him from the comics. But he's Captain America's longtime partner, and he's going to get his turn as Captain America. And it's not unprecedented because Bucky Barnes, the Winter Soldier, was Captain America for a while. The U.S. agent was Captain America for a while. There was also, as part of the Young Avengers series, I think his name was Patriot, but his father was black, and he was the original Captain America, the guy who went through the experiment before Steve Rogers did, but it didn't work as well on him. So it's not a new idea, but it is once again taking a major existing character and doing something to make it more socially inclusive.
Right, which is wonderful. I think that it's wonderful to have the exclusivity. I just don't know if they have to, like, we already have why can't we add a character into the mythos or elevate a character that's
Make
already
Falcon
there?
bigger, right?
And yeah, Falcon was, like, in Captain America Winter Soldier, Falcon had a great character. I really enjoyed his character. So why not take that and run with it and keep going with that instead of changing a set that we're already really attached to. I just, that bothers me a little, though I love the exclusivity side of it because it is so important for when you're developing and growing up, which if you are a white male, you don't really know how it feels. But when you look on the TV screen and there is no one that is you on the screen that is the hero, and maybe even it is always you that's the one that's the victim or the one that's the perpetrator of a crime, or it's always you that's owning a dry cleaning shop or any other stereotype, and you're only the stereotype, and then the heroes always end up being white men. You don't really know what it feels like growing up, but I would always be attached to the female characters, and I would hope that they would be strong and brave and powerful. And it's really hard for kids growing up not to see themselves on the screen ever. So I love the exclusivity part of it. It's just, I'm also, I guess, really old-fashioned, and I like, my characters to be the characters that I grew up with. I would love to have more.
Although, I mean, they did, like I said, they did give turns to other people to be Captain America, and it is odd that Falcon, who was his longtime partner, hasn't been given a turn yet, sort of.
I just say, is it necessary, Rene?
Well, was it necessary for Bucky to be Captain America? Was it necessary for U.S. Agent to be Captain America?
But again, that's in the comic books. And
this is the comic books, though.
So, like, if it was like a long time ago, that's great. I don't know. It just seems...
So going back to the elevation part, why not do something interesting with Falcon? He obviously had a good movie turn. Could there be a Falcon movie? T'Challa, the Black Panther, they've been talking about making a movie with John Singleton for a long time. I think with the I don't know how to pronounce their names. Hugland brothers for a long time. Wesley Snipes wanted to make a movie with them. They did make the Blade movies. That was a trilogy. Arguably, they should have stopped after the first one and maybe made a Black Panther movie instead. But this isn't new either. I mean, when Hal Jordan stopped being the Green Lantern, John Stewart, who was African American, became the Green Lantern. And I think that was fine. He was even the Green Lantern used in the Justice League. And DC has Cyborg, for example, that they made Steel with Shaquille O'Neal, but then they haven't made a Cyborg movie, though undoubtedly he'll be one of the 18 million characters in Superman versus Batman this next year. So I think there's a lot of opportunity there. But there's two things that sort of quasi-annoy me. One, and I'm not sure this solves that problem, one is that the characters that go beyond, that are more culturally inclusive, are always derivatives of the original characters. So, for example, Supergirl, Batgirl. And then on the other side, characters who are not white often have very ethnic things attached, like Black Lightning, Black Panther. It's not white Spider-Man. Oh, yeah, I should mention Spider-Man in the Ultimate Universe is now half black, half Hispanic. He's Michael Morales. I think it's Michael Morales. Is actually Spider-Man. Peter Parker died, and he is the new Spider-Man. So it's not completely new, but I think that it's still in an awkward teenage years of maturing as being human rather than being specifically cultured or raced or whatever.
I think that it also depends on how it is written. if they really take the time and try to make it evolve so that it's not just like, one person dies off and then suddenly it's given to someone else and it seems almost pushed or forced, that bothers me much more than if they develop a story, it makes sense, you're already have an understanding of why this character would take over, and it doesn't seem like some sort of contrived, I'm just going to do it because this is what I should do. Sometimes you just know that this is what is right. Like, it just makes sense for the characters and they've developed it that way and they've taken the time to get us settled into it and have a comfort zone to it. So if, say, I'm just gonna, if it was like Thor's daughter that became Thor, or, something else, like, you would be like, oh, okay, that makes total sense. It would make sense to the story, and if they developed it along, and, he had her practice, and she was already, I was gonna totally massacre Thor's hammer,
Mjolnir.
I was close.
Mjolnir. Yep.
I was close. I should get like half a geek point for that. Then, you know what? It would be.
But see, I argue they're doing that. Like, arguably, that's what they're doing right now. Like,
that makes it easier for me.
Because Thor's hammer, like, it's in the Marvel comic, it's not Thor, it's Thor's hammer, and it's Donald Blake who is Thor on Earth, but he picks up that hammer. He picks up the cane and taps the cane, and the cane turns into a hammer, and it gives him the power of Thor. But then Beta Ray Bill is also worthy, and he picks it up, and he becomes Beta Ray Thor. And, this is another case where Donald Blake is no longer worthy, but this woman, and I don't think they've announced her name yet, she is worthy. She picks it up and she becomes Thor. Likewise, Captain America, I believe the super soldier serum stops working, he starts aging, he becomes more like Nick Fury, and then Falcon takes on the role of Captain America. And I should point out a really famous example. In the Ultimate Universe, Nick Fury was made to be, like, he was originally an old white dude, and he was made to be Sam Jackson, and then when they made the movies, they actually cast Sam Jackson to play Nick Fury. So, and it goes beyond comic books. On the TV show Elementary, Watson is played by Lucy Liu, who's female and Chinese, so they switched gender and they switched race. Sometimes it feels like a token thing. Like in Man of Steel, they used Lawrence Fishburne as Perry White just because, you need a black character. Why not just swap somebody in instead of going to the trouble of actually integrating an interesting character into the storyline? But I think in these cases, they're doing a good job of making it a progression of the story.
If it's a progression, it's easier for me, but if it's well written and it doesn't seem to be, the times are changing and people are all understanding, one, is that there's a lot of market in having, people care about, like, I would buy, if I had little girls, I would buy them comic strips that would have girls as strong characters as well, because you want them to imbue those character traits into themselves and to know that they can be more than what they can be, just like little boys grew up and that's what they felt that they could be. So unfortunately, when I was growing up, there were not a lot of female characters that I really could emulate or care about. Usually there would be like, the bad guys turned girl, or they were the sidekicks, and I'm like, I don't really like that. So it was like Firestarter, and like it was kind of cool. It was
Firestorm.
Like,
How dare
Firestorm. Sorry, apologies. Firestorm. It was Spider-Man and his Amazing Friends, and it was kind of cool, but there wasn't really a lot. And then there was Rogue. But
it was Gem. She was truly outrageous.
I did watch Gem. Goodness, I did. I watched Gem.
Again, like She-Ra was the female He-Man, right?
I watched She-Ra too, which I liked much more, and I liked Red Sonja. But it can be done. If it's done well, it can be done really in a way that's interesting, and it'll help just make people, it'll help people feel like, it's not just, superheroes are not just for white guys, which I think is good.
Black Canary on Arrow, although she's not black, but she is a female canary.
Yeah, they just call her Canary on Arrow.
Yeah, well, they just call him Arrow instead of Green Arrow. They're anti-color on Green Arrow.
They're anti-color, though. Of course, he's just wearing green, and he's just wearing red, and she.
Spoilers: he's wearing green.
So he uses an arrow.
And in the vein of, I'm a big believer in putting our money where our mouth is. I feel like we should never complain about something unless we're helping or we're offering like suggestions. So we've started on iMore. If you go to imore.com/accessibility, we have a hub there for all our accessibility stuff. We have an accessibility forum now. If you go to forums zentech.imore.com. We've been doing a lot of writing. We've actually started a series of columns. Stephen Aquino did the first one yesterday on hardware accessibility and what a difference it can make to somebody who has motor skill problems to have different sizes or different weights of devices. And it's something we're going to absolutely keep doing because we want to keep a lot of attention on the subject because, again, it makes so much difference in so many lives.
Well, I think it's awesome, Rene. I think it's awesome for iMore. I think it's also great for you because you have done a whole bunch of shows on many different, difficulties in the tech world and ways in which we should change, such as you did the, was it the debug on sexism, or was it?
Yeah, debug. We did the sexism and technology panel.
Sexism, and you're dealing with it with integration and stuff. And I just have to throw my hat off to you. I was talking about you on Isometric about how you always really try to give everyone a very fair shake. And the internet is terrible, and sometimes they really give you a hard time, and they don't know how much care and thought you put into everything that you write, and you know the value and the changes that you're making, and you make a conscious decision to try to make things better for everyone. So.
Well, that's very nice of you. Your case of scotch is in the mail.
I don't drink. Okay,
one thing I don't on Iterate, we also had Doug Russell, who at the time was independent and is now on Apple's accessibility team, and he very kindly went through a lot of the things that developers can do to help make their apps more accessible.
Oh, that's great.
And I'll put a link
that's great.
to that.
You can just send me some of those snacks. You ate them all, didn't you?
And we're back to the snacks.
You ate them. You ate them, right?
I do want to remind people that we do have sponsorships like NatureBox, like Harry's, and it's being done by our friends at the Midroll, and they want to try to make sure that they match us with the best sponsors possible. So what they're doing is running a survey, and I'm going to pull up the details right now. Where are they? Oh, I should do this better. Hold, please. Should know this by heart by now. I've read it so often. All right, so if you complete the survey, it's only a 5-minute survey, you'll be entered in an ongoing monthly raffle to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So all you have to do, and they promise never to share your email address, not to send you any emails at all whatsoever unless you win. So if you get an email from them, it is because you've won. Do not junk it. Please go to www.podsurvey.com/ZenTech. That's www.podsurvey.com/ZenTech. Take the survey, get a chance to win a $100 Amazon gift card.
And they really do give it out. Everyone's like, no, it's not real. Yes, it's real. They really give it out. You can win. It's free money for 5 minutes of work.
Lex Friedman wins once a month. No, I'm just kidding. All right, Georgia, if people are interested in reading more of your smart stuff or following you on the socials, where can they go?
You can find me on iMore.com and, of course, on Twitter @Georgia_Dow.
And they can find you on the Isometric show as well?
Yes, on Isometric as well. That's true. It's a really fun show on a podcast on gaming.
Pandats.
Yes, and I'm with Steve, Maddie, and Bree, and so we have a blast.
Nice. You can find me at Rene Ritchie. You can find me on the Mobile Nations Network, including iMore.com. Thank you, Georgia. I think this is an important subject, and I'm glad we had a chance to talk about it.
I'm happy you suggested it. Thanks.
All right. Talk to you next time.
Bye.
Bye.